So here you have it, guys. A couple of 5.7 Hemi heads. This one toasted two of the intake valves. I don't know if you could see that on camera. Probably can't, but it's actually cup shaped. So it's a few thousandths smaller in outside diameter than the valve seat is. So I had no compression at all in two of the cylinders. So right now what we're doing is we're removing the valve springs. I got all new valves for it. So we're going to clean up the heads, lap in some new valves, put the springs back on, and that should take care of the cylinder heads. But also, with the heads off, found the camshaft is also a little flat. Two of the lifters in those same cylinders round off. So I got two dead lifters, which means the camshaft is bad. So we're gonna pull off the camshaft now, make sure that the cam bearings are good, and get a new camshaft in this. Stay tuned. Okay guys, here's a tip. I don't own a fan clutch tool. I've never owned a fan clutch tool. I don't think I've ever rented one. I use a regular plumber's wrench. Size it to the nut. Sometimes works better when the belt is still on. I don't have the belt on anymore, but use the pry bar. Put a little tension on the pulley to hold the pulley in the water pump. And then what I do is put a nice sized hammer. While you're holding tension on that pulley, give this a whack. It usually knocks it loose. I got lucky on this one. The water pump was recently replaced, so it wasn't terribly tight, it wasn't busted. And you just spin it off. Oh, the belt didn't get in the way. Also worth noting, sometimes these are left-hand threads, sometimes right-hand threads. Just make sure you know which thread you have before you go whacking at it. Otherwise you could be tightening it instead of loosening it. Okay, from here, you start taking off front cover. So I need to get to the camshaft. I have to replace the camshaft. It's got two bad lifters, one of which the roller is completely gone. Well, at least ground flat and starting to grind into the camshaft. Once that happens, it's it. You got to replace the whole camshaft, and you have to replace all the lifters. We're going to inspect the cam bearings to see that they're still okay. I've had instances when I've done these camshafts and I've found material in the front portion of the camshaft, because this has variable valve timing as well, and it just seized that cam bearing right to the camshaft. When I pulled out the camshaft, it came right out of the cylinder. Came right out of the engine block, and it shouldn't. It stayed behind. So I'm going to pull off the front cover here, and then show you what it looks like once we have that all up. The water pump. There's a bunch of different bolts on here, different lengths. I try to pull it off and keep all the bolts in the holes they came on, just so I don't have to try to look up later on and see where all the bolts go. So again, try to keep them all together, especially when you're reusing the water pump. But mark them, some kind of sequence, one through whatever it is. Okay, water pump's off, timing cover's off, air conditioning pump is off. The Freon in this thing was already gone, so it made it easier. I was able to disconnect lines from the compressor, give me a little bit of access. I also removed the grill so I can get access right through. Now, I don't recall if I had to last time or not. I think I was able to just sneak it through after I removed the radiator and the AC condenser, which you can see down there. And I bolted the radiator, and bolted the condenser from the radiator, and just kind of swung it down out of the way. Get that timing cover off. There's 4 bolts underneath that hold the oil pan. And we'll make sure we clean those really good when we go to put this all back together. I have never had a need to have to drop the oil pan when I've done this. You know, this gasket's usually pretty pliable, lasts really long. It's a silicone based gasket, so unless anything's really ripped, you should be able to reuse it. Now the tricky part with this is setting it at top dead center. There's some weird notches on the crank sprocket. I don't think you can see it on video, but there's a weird notch that needs to point a certain direction, and it's really hard to see with the oil pump on. And the only way to get the oil pump off is to remove the oil pan. So I'm going to use a mirror and a nice bright light, and I'm going to try to get that positioned as best as I can. And since I'm reusing all these components anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the chain on this top cam phaser, and as well on the crank. That way, when I go to put everything back together, everything should be timed. Now, I'm going to look at those marks to make sure everything's right, but this will just give me a little extra insurance once everything's painted up and marked up pretty well. This is also a good time. You want to check, make sure your tensioners are good, well, tensioner and your guides. Make sure nothing's broken. If they're broken, both of these you could change without taking the oil pump off. But just make sure nothing's broken. I mean, you've come this far, you might as well spend the extra couple of dollars and change those as well. So, next step, I'm going to set this thing at top dead center, and I'll show you guys that. Okay, standing in the engine bay. Here's my crazy amount of marks. 2 marks on the chain. Should be at the 12 o'clock position, straight up. Use this bolt hole as a reference. And just put a couple marks here. They'll probably get washed away when I clean off the surface anyway, but that mark on there is the mark that's on the sprocket. The 2 marks on the chain. And then down here what I did, I marked the keyway to the oil pump, because the other mark, you have to look through here, and we use a mirror and a nice bright flashlight, and you can see the single link. The single link should be down at the 6 o'clock position, so these marks are essentially opposite of each other. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So use, look at my mirror now. I have a little tiny, I don't know, dental mirror. You could stick it right underneath here, and with a nice bright light, you could see that mark underneath there. And if I'm not mistaken, the one tooth that it goes on is kind of like a little notch to it. It's got like a little filed edge on there. The rest of them are nice straight up. This one has like a little filed edge to it. It's a little taper to it. And when I get everything off of the cam, the tensioner, and the guide off, I'll see if I can't try to get a picture of that. I know there's a couple of pictures online that you can see this with. I might try to post it in the description, a link that'll show you the proper timing with this, so you can sort of see what you're doing. Again, this is only if you're trying to keep the oil pan on. Otherwise, you would remove the oil pan, the oil pump, and then the timing on this is easy. But I'm trying to do everything with it in the car. I'm trying not to remove the oil pan, and that's why I'm marking everything up now, because it ran, it just didn't run well. So I know the timing is correct, and I want to keep it that way. One other thing, to hold the tensioner released, just need a small piece of wire, something stiff, a small drill bit or something. I've got loads of these tensioner grenade springs that I just kind of keep around for this reason. But just push the tensioner in, load that spring in, load that pin in, and then your tensioner is loose. You can remove the tensioner now safely. Take the guide bolt off, and then I'm going to remove the cam bolt, take the cam out. So I've removed the cam plate, the thrust plate. It's 4 T35 taper head bolts. I'm going to remove those. They're a little tight. Don't strip them out, otherwise you'll have fun trying to drill them out. And you got to remove all the lifters. Every single one from the cam. They're held in with those plastic guides, 8mm bolts. Pull all the lifters out. I found a magnet works pretty well to get hung up in there. And then stick a bolt inside the camshaft, and then you can use that as leverage to pull the camshaft out. You want to be careful though with the cam lobes. You don't want to nick any of the bearing journals. So try to keep that camshaft nice and balanced in there. Okay. Bolt inside the camshaft, and use that to hold a little extra leverage. Might have to spin it a little bit to get it out. Try to keep it from not nicking any of the journals. You might have to rotate it a little bit. Try to keep it nice and straight in there. I'll show you real quick. This is the damage that happens on these camshafts. You can see where the roller has just ground right into the cam lobe. So this will give you a nice little ticking sound, a misfire. You can see this lobe, it's starting to go. I don't know if it's showing up on the camera well, but you can see the galling on that cam lobe. This one's not very far behind. It's going to start looking like this one. So you got to replace the whole camshaft, all the lifters, everything. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at these cam bearings in here and make sure they're still in decent shape. I mean, looking at the journals on here, they all look pretty well. So I think they might have got lucky. We don't have to replace those cam bearings. Alright, so you can see this cam bearing shows some signs of wear. It doesn't feel very deep. I may change that bearing. It's not difficult. You need a cam bearing installation tool. I'll pull that one out and then knock a new one in. The other ones look pretty good. I know it's really hard to see off the camera, but they look pretty good. So we'll just clean everything really well. Make sure we put some good assembly lube back on this new camshaft. I'm going to put everything back in.